Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, on today's episode, I've got a little bit of a test that I did for myself. I decided, you know what? How budget-friendly can I make an overpowered commander? One that is quite expensive. How overpowered of a budget deck can I make? So yeah, I did just that. And on this episode, I'm going to be taking you through just who that commander is, well, right now. Because that commander is, of course, Urza, Lord High Artificer. Yeah, this is the kind of power level for a commander that really kind of broke the mold. It kind of said, hey, you know what? This is a new level of power for a commander. Because Urza finally got a card. I mean, other than Blind Seer, but we're not really counting that one. And now Urza has kind of just laid the groundwork for what an overpowered commander really is. And Urza is also now, well, thanks to a couple of reprints, $9.17. Still incredibly expensive for a budget channel like mine. That being said, I still got the deck price to be $23.29 estimated cost according to Moxfield, not including, shipping or basic lands, but still you might already have those basic lands, and if you don't, maybe you could borrow some from friends or your LGS, etc., etc. Regardless, still, yeah, this is like, almost half the budget with the commander, essentially, and yet you can still do a very powerful, budget-friendly deck with it. A 1/4 Human Artificer for 2 blue. When it enters the battlefield, you get a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token with. This creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Tap an untapped artifact you control, add blue, pay 5, shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. Yeah, this commander, again, does a lot of things for you, a lot of powerful things, most notably turning every single one of your artifacts into essentially a mana rock. And yeah, there's plenty of ways that we can really take advantage of that. That being said, it also kind of brings us a mana rock in itself because it makes a 0/0 construct that also can just be a game winner for us by just being a massive creature. And also, yeah, we can just dump our mana, our absurd amounts of mana into that activated ability and just go get things off the top of our library for free. Now, those are random things, but still, yeah, no matter what you hit, you're probably going to get some good value. But yeah, this is a crazy good commander, one that just begs you to utilize a lot of artifacts and a lot of low-to-the-ground artifacts at that. And of course, we've got a ton of budget-friendly artifacts that we can take advantage of. Outside of the commander, every single card in this stack is 50 cents or less. That's right, 2/4 or less. Again, very budget-friendly. Estimated cost $23.29. If you're interested in this deck, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. Now, with all that said, let's jump into the tactics. So let's start things off with tactic number 1, Urza approaches, and of course, first up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble. Fantastic mana ramp in any color combination, and land ramp at that. Pay 2 tap, sacrifice, go into basic land and play tapped, or, again, with this commander, this is just, hey, put it down for 1 mana, and it is a mana rock once Urza is in play. Pretty crazy. Next up, Everflowing Chalice. Even better when it comes to Urza being in play, because, hey, this is a 0 mana rock for us then. Or, if you want to on turn 2 to get Urza out on turn 3, sure, put 2 mana into it with that multi-kicker, and it can tap for 1 mana essentially with that multi-kicker. Or if you want to dump more mana into it, you can. Next up, Ash Cornucopia. Speaking of which, very similar. We can play it for 0, again with Urza in play, tap for a blue. Or basically, it's going to tap for X based on the number of charge counters on it. X mana of any color. You know what I mean. Moving on, Felwar, still another great turn 2 play to get Urza out. Usually can tap for a blue for us. Fractured Power Stone. This one does not tap for a blue. That does not really matter all that much. We're running an absurd amount of artifacts in this deck. We don't really need all that much mana fixing. Tap for a blue. And again, this is a monocolor deck. Then there's Mind Stone. Tap for a color. I think I said tap for blue with Power Stone. Colorless. Anyways, Mind Stone, exact same thing, except we can also pay 1 tap, sacrifice to draw a card. Then there's Pillar of Origins, enters battlefield, which is a creature type. We're going to choose, well, any of Urza's creature type. Human. Cool. There you go. I believe Urza's a human, right? Still, yeah, human. Not a god. Human Artificer. And then we can tap to add 1 mana any color to spend this mana to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. So again, early on, we can use this for just 2 mana to get it out, to get our commander out on turn 3. Or later, hey, if you're just playing it, you can actually utilize, your commander's ability to tap it for a blue anyways for anything. So it's not limited to just those creatures. Prismatic Lens can either tap for a colorless or help us fix our mana with that mana filtering. Usually not going to be the case that we need, though. Price Statue is a bit of an interesting one. Enters battlefield or spin the graveyard from the battlefield, you get a treasure token. This one, again, you can utilize that treasure if you want to get Urza out quicker, or yeah, this is basically kind of like 2 mana rocks in one, thanks to Urza, Ornithopter Paradise, a mana dork that can help us out, tapping for any color, and then Silvermere, tapping for a blue. Regardless, though, even though these, mana dorks might have summoning sickness, yeah, Urza's already in play. We can utilize them right away since it's Urza who has the ability to tap the artifacts, not just giving them to the artifacts themselves. But now let's move on to tactic number 2, less is more, because yeah, cost reduction can be absolutely huge with a commander like this. And Helm of Awakening, yeah, this might help everyone. Spells you cast, or spells everyone casts, I should say, cost 1 less to cast. That's okay. If we're reducing our opponent's spells, that's okay. We'll be nice to them for a little bit, all right? But more likely, we're just going to get this out and then all of a sudden just pop off and throw a ton of artifacts into play. And we're going to be doing that anyways, regardless. When you're saving mana on your spells, you can cast spell for spell for spell. And at a certain point, yeah, even just casting certain spells like Wayfarer's Bauble for free. Next up, speaking of which, Ethereum Sculptor. A 1/2 Vidalcan Artificer. This artifact spells you cast cost points to cast, so this one is specific toward artifacts. That being said, it is an artifact itself too, so yeah, it can tap for mana with our commander in play. Then Foundry Inspector, again, more of these cost reducers that we have, the better it's going to be, reducing our spells more and more and more. Potentially, it's casting spell for spell for spell for free. Artifact spells you cast cost points to cast, and again, it can tap for any mana. What's not to love? Now let's move on to tactic number 3, My Hero Zero, because yeah, cost reduction is nice, but we've got some spells out there, like Everflowing Chalice, Astral Cornucopia, that don't need any cost reduction for us, like a Quarter Shield. This essentially is like a Mox Sapphire in this deck, right? Essentially, all these are essentially like Mox Sapphires, essentially, because our commander says, hey, you know what? Artifacts can tap for a blue, and these cost 0. Equipped creature gets +0/+3 in its vigilance. Nice. Sure, we can use that if we need to, but more likely, yeah, we're just going to get in play and utilize it as a mana rock. Bonesaw, same thing essentially. Just a 0 mana rock. +1/+0 if you want it. Briber's Purse. Yeah, if you want to get some mana into this to make it so that we can get some charge counters on it, or should I say gem counters on it, we can make it so that target creature can attack or block. If you really need to do that, sure. But if not, hey, cool. Just 0 mana on this. Cathar's Shield. Again, basically the exact same thing as a Quarter Shield. +0/+3 vigilance. More importantly, 0 mana rock. Chimeric Mass. Enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it. We can pay 1 to make it into a creature with, that power and toughness, but we don't really care too much about that. We can just pay 0 for this as well. Darksteel Relic. This one is a 0 mana indestructible artifact that does absolutely nothing else. But again, with this commander, this is a better, Mox Sapphire. Then there's Delph's Cone. I was going to say Delphi's Cone. Delph's Cone. We can tap and sacrifice it and make it so that I guess we gain life equal to creature's power. That is going to hit us. It doesn't matter. Anyways, or that we're going to hit someone else. Don't worry about that. You're barely ever going to use that most likely. You're just going to utilize the mana rock. Comes to gaining life too. If you really want to gain 1 life, you can pay 2 and tap the Fountain of Youth. Nope, not doing that. Okay, good. Yeah, just tapping it for mana instead. Herbal Baltus, pay 3, sacrifice, regenerate target creature. We can actually utilize this one in an emergency situation to save our commander, so that is something to definitely keep in mind. Kite Shield, worse than the other shields that we talked about. +0/+3, no vigilance. Again, just a 0 mana rock. That's what we care about. Ornithopter, 0 mana dork. Lovely. Spider Silk Net. +0/+2 reach. Sure, I guess if an opponent's got a big flyer and you want to suit this up, to make sure you can at least block it. Sure. More importantly, though, 0 mana rock. Tormod Script. This one can definitely come in handy for you, though. Tap, sacrifice, exile cards to target player's graveyard. If you are playing against a Reanimator deck, or, a deck that might be self-milling, trying to get things in the graveyard, reusing them, yeah, ruin their day by just absolutely demolishing their graveyard, or again, just use this for mana. And, hey, Zurin Orb. This one is a great just panic button for you. Sacrifice a land, gain 2 life. Yeah, if you are getting low at the end of the game, or I guess getting low at any point, hey, sacrifice some lands, save yourself, and hope that you can just win, without all those lands. And you might be able to with this kind of a deck, because again, your mana rocks are going to be tapping for a lot. But now let's move on to tactic number 4, Value Town, because, yeah, we've got some high value plays with this deck. First up, Dramatic Reversal. Yeah, Ice Crown Scepter, unfortunately, is not budget friendly, or maybe fortunately, because, yeah, it's kind of a nasty combo. Regardless, this card is still incredible with this commander. Untap on online permanent you control for just 2 mana instant speed. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of non-land permanents out there that are going to tap for mana. Again, all those mana rocks that we have, essentially, and the cards that are going to become mana rocks thanks to our commander, yeah, tap them for a ton of mana. Again, if you've got 10 artifacts in play, tap them for 10 mana. play this, untap all your mana rocks, tap them again. Basically, you're, what, 18 mana then, essentially? This can nearly double up your mana for you in that turn. Absurd things can happen thanks to this. In a somewhat similar way, we've got Turnabout. Choose artifact, creature, or land. Tap all untap permanents of the chosen type target player controls or untap, basically, instead. Yeah, this can be situational. It can save you if an opponent has a lot of creatures and they're going to be swinging out at you. Tap those down. More likely, though, yeah, utilize this, again, as a slightly worse dramatic reversal to untap your artifacts and essentially just get a giant boost of mana, a giant ritual effect. Moving on, we've got Mirren Spy. This is a very interesting one, a 1/3 drone with flying that unfortunately is not an artifact, but it does say whenever you cast an artifact, you may untap target creature, which is huge because basically, if you just get one creature in play that can tap for mana, like, you know, that construct that your commander makes, hey, all of a sudden, whenever you're casting an artifact spell, which again, we've gotten an absurd amount of them, and also we have a lot of free ones, or ones that are going to be free too, whenever you cast those, you get to untap that creature, which again, can tap for mana thanks to our commander. So basically, we're going to be netting mana every single time we cast a spell that costs 0, and even go breaking even, you know, with ones that cost 1, etc., etc. Absolutely crazy. Moving on to Scaretiller, a very interesting one. A 1/4 Scarecrow that is an artifact. Whenever it becomes tapped, you can choose one, play a land card from your hand on battlefield tapped, return target land card from graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Either way, basically, you are ramping even further. So let's say mana dork for you thanks to your commander that essentially, hey, tap for a blue, and also get a land from probably your hand into play for free for even more mana. Absolutely crazy. More mana next turn, I should say. It does come into play tap, keep that in mind, but still, set yourself up. You've got plenty of ways to draw a lot of cards. Set yourself up for some massive turns. And speaking of a massive turn, Shimmer Mirror, a crazy cool card. A 2/2 with flash. It says you may cast artifact spells with light flash. This can really change the way you go about your game, essentially saying, you know what, I don't really feel like playing on my turn. I'm just going to draw, pass, say go, and yeah, I'm just going to play probably on the turn, my opponent's turn right before my turn, essentially, and just make sure that I have more flexibility to what I'm going to be doing, avoid some board wipes, etc., etc. Yeah, there's some really crazy things you can do when you're playing at Instant Speed. Now, as good as all these cards are, there is one, in my opinion, that stands above the rest, and that is a golden pig of this deck, the number 1 card out of our 99, and that is Battered Golem, a very, very, well, janky card for many decks out there, but really cool. In this one, a 3/2 artifact creature golem for 3 that says it doesn't untap during tap step. How sad. But it says whenever an artifact comes into play, you may untap it. That is absolutely massive with this kind of a commander because, again, Urza says, hey, Battered Golem, you're a dork, a mana dork. And so basically, this can tap for a blue every single time we play an artifact, or again, any artifact comes in play, this untaps. This is going to generate an absurd amount of mana, especially on turns that we go off, and we've got plenty of ways for this deck to just go off and do some crazy things. This is going to be a giant source of mana. Get all that mana, dump that into some big spells, maybe into Urza's ability, and do some really crazy things. An absolutely amazing card in this deck. Battered Golem, congratulations for being the Golden Pig. Now, when I said that we've got ways to set ourselves up for some massive plays and some huge turns, well, let's talk about tack number 6. Be right back. And cards like Displacement Wave, a source for X blue, return all non-land permanents for every mana cost, X or less to owner's hand. Yeah, you even might have certain circumstances where you just say X equals 0, pay blue, and then all of a sudden you are bouncing back all of those 0 mana artifacts back to your hand so you can replay them again for free, get whatever triggers you have, you know, like Battered Golem essentially, and also get to reuse them for mana because, again, your commander says, hey, yeah, tap those artifacts for mana after you get them back into play. Obviously, you can be a bit more flexible with this one. You can put whatever you need to into that action. You can use this as a board wipe to get rid of your opponent's things, and your things too, but you can probably replay them anyways because the amount of mana that you'll have with this kind of a deck. But yeah, bounce things back to your hand, recast them, get those triggers, get that mana again. Hercule's Recall, a great card as well. Basically, bounce all artifacts target player controls for 2 mana. Again, an even bigger way to set yourself up or set an opponent back if they've got a lot of artifacts. Next up, Filter Out. Draw non-creature, non-land permanents to owner's hands. This one says, you know what, let's do that even further. Let's just bounce a lot of things. Everything that is not an artifact back to everyone's hand. Not an artifact. Everything that is essentially not a creature or a land. So it does bounce artifacts again, 3 mana. This can be a board wipe that is pretty one-sided because it can really hurt your opponents, whereas you actually want to bounce your artifacts back to your hand so that you can replay them. Also, rebuild, we got that as well. Return all artifacts to our hands, so again, basically the exact same thing, except not bouncing other things as well. Cycling for 2 if we don't need that, but again, yeah, 3 mana, bounce your artifacts, what's not to love. Consuming Tide, one that we can really take advantage of, and our opponents might not like us so much for it. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control. Return all non-land permanents not chosen sway to his hands. Then you draw a card for each opponent that has more cards in their hand than you. We might not be drawing cards because of the number of absurd artifacts that we get into play, but what we care about again is basically, hey, Urza, you stay in play. All right. Dump all my artifacts back into play. Get more mana. Do crazy things. Devastation Tide. If we really need to reset things, let's say great one. Return all non-land permanents to his hands. It's a 5-mana spell or miracle cost if we draw it off the top of our deck as the first card of the turn. Hey, just 1 and a blue. Then we got Reduced to Dreams, another 5-mana spell. Return all artifacts and enchantments to his hands. Again, this is a way to set our opponents back, especially again if they have an artifact deck or an enchantress deck. Set them back to the Stone Age, and we, yeah, set ourselves back, but not really, because again, we're going to display them all again. Flood of Tears, again, yet another way to kind of get around, you know, bouncing Urza in a way. Return all non-land permanents to his hands. If you return 4 or more non-token permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent card from your hand on the battlefield. I mean, that might be Urza, might be something else, but yeah, basically cheat something back out into play, and we're pretty much going to read that requirement basically every single time. So yeah, these cards can be great board wipes for us that can be one-sided in some ways and help us really take advantage of the artifacts that we do have. Speaking of which, let's move on to tech number 7, Artifact Advantage. And first up, we've got Artificer's Assistant. Unfortunately, not an artifact. That being said, this 1/1 bird can just provide us with an absurd amount of value. Whenever you cast a historic spell, scry 1, and of course that includes artifacts and legendaries too, which is nice. But yeah, artifacts most importantly. Every single time you cast a historic spell, hey, you get to scry 1, look at the top card of your library, put it on the bottom if you don't like it, or yeah, just set yourself up to draw the cards, dig down in your deck for exactly what you need. Speaking of which, Candy Trail, a low-the-ground artifact that can help us out in a similar way. Enters the battlefield, scry 2. You can also pay 2 tap, sacrifice it, gain 3 life, and draw a card if you're desperate to do so. If not, hey, it's just a 1-mana mana rock that taps for a blue for you and also helps you scry to dig deeper into your deck. Sentinel Totem, slightly less scrying, but still a good amount. Enters battlefield, scry 1. Also tap, exile it, exile cards from graveyard. So again, a good panic button for you if you need it. If you say, hey, that player over there is Reanimator deck and they've got some massive things in their graveyard, let's get rid of those. Moving on, Collector's Vault. Artifact for 2 tap, or pay 2 tap, draw a card, discard a card, create a treasure token. This one's a very interesting one because, well, this is a way for us to actually dig down into our deck again, draw a discard, so some loot there, get rid of some dead cards in your hand. Also on top of that, basically a mana rock generator, because again, this does make treasure tokens, but our commander basically says, hey, treasures are also basically just mana rocks for you. Tap those for mana, so yeah, this is pretty crazy, pretty good. Riddlesmith, another great card, 2 Inhuman Artificer. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may draw a card if you discard a card. So again, every single one of our artifact spells now are essentially loot spells as well. Dig down through your deck, get the exact cards that you need to win, and also get rid of dead cards in your hand. Unctus Grand Metatech, this one's an interesting one. 2/4 Phyrexian Vidalcan. Other blue creatures you control, whenever this creature comes tapped, draw a card, discard a card. Also as an anthem for artifact creatures. Don't really care about that too much. I mean, it could come in handy, I guess, when you're trying to finish things off. Also, pay a Phyrexian blue until a turn target creature control becomes a blue artifact to other types, colors and types, activate on sorcery. Basically, hey, any of your artifact creatures now can just be also blue, or any of your blue creatures can be artifact creatures too. So they can also tap for mana, and also, hey, when you tap any of them, yeah, you get to loot, which is fantastic. Great ways to actually dig down through your deck. Speaking of which, Transplant Theorist, 2/4 Phyrexian Artificer. Whenever it or other artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So this one's not a cast trigger like our previous one was. This is an ETB, and again, it counts any artifacts, not, it doesn't say non-token, so any artifacts themselves. Also pay 2, put target card from your graveyard at the bottom of your library. If you need to do that, go for it. Yeah, if you're going to be milling yourself out too, make sure you do something like that to save yourself. Then we've got Future Sight, an incredible card. Basically turns your library into a second hand. Play the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library. Yeah, we're going to be churning and burning through the top card of our library again and again and again. Just being able to play spell for spell. Again, we've got so many cards that cost 0, so many ways to reduce cards, and just cast them for, free or at a very reduced cost. And finally, there's Shimmer Dragon, 5/6 Flying Dragon. As long as you control 4 more artifacts, which we're going to. It has hexproof. On top of that, pay 2. Tap to a tapped artifact you control, draw a card. Kind of a payment, I guess. Yeah, basically, hey, those artifacts that you haven't played using for mana? You can also just use them to draw an absurd amount of cards. Just tap them all, use something like Dramatic Reversal to untap them, maybe do it again with something else. Yeah, some crazy things can happen with a card like this, and you can draw an absurd amount. But now let's move on to tactic number 8, X marks the spot. And yeah, we've got some massive ways to use our massive amounts of mana. Like, pull for tomorrow, instant speed, X blue, draw X card and discard a card. Yeah, save up that mana for right before your turn and say, you know what? How many artifacts do I have in play? Like 20? Okay, cool. Tap them all, tap my lands, and just put a certain amount of mana into this, draw an absurd amount of cards, set yourself up to win on the next turn, and absolutely fun play. Next up, Commander's Insight. Again, one more mana, essentially, another blue. Target player draws X cards plus social card for each time they've cast the Commander commands on this game. Yeah, we're going to be drawing a lot of cards with this one as well. Speaking of which, Diviner's Portent. We can get even luckier with a card like this. Instant for X blue, blue, blue. Roll a d20 and add the number of cards in your hand. If it's a 1 through 14, draw X cards. 15 plus, you scry X, then draw X. So if we hit that, hey, set yourself up for a massive play. Even the score, your opponents can actually help you set yourself up too. Instant for X blue, blue, blue. It's going to cost blue, 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 less gas if opponent's drawing 4 more cards this turn. Yeah, draw X cards. Basically, an X draw spell if an opponent happens to draw 4 cards. Yeah, you get a reduction of 3 mana for this. And you're basically just paying the X for that draw. Finally, Stroke of Genius. This actually technically could be a way for you to win as well. Instant speed, X, 2, and a blue. Target player draws X cards again. We can have some absolutely absurd turns when we're set up properly. Some huge turns where you generate an absurd amount of mana, and you could just mill someone out with a card like this. But now to tactic number 9. Can't touch this. Now I've talked about some ways to already protect Urza, but we've got even more ways to protect Urza and some artifacts that can help us out with that. Giant's Amulet. For a single blue mana, it's an equipment. Ignore the part about, making a 4/4. Sure, you can do it if you want to. But the most important thing is equipped creature gets +0/+1 and has this creature hexproof as long as it's untapped. So keep Urza untapped and Urza is safe from spells. Then there's Mask of Avacyn, +1/+2 and hexproof as well. And finally, Mirror Shield, +0/+2 hexproof, and sure, blocking a death touch creature, that doesn't matter all that much. What does matter, again, is these are low to the ground equipment that give our commander hexproof and protect it. And also, yeah, you can just utilize them as mana rocks as well. Even if they're attached to your commander, you can still tap them for mana. It looks kind of funny on the battlefield when you got equipment that's, tapped, but hey, it works great. But now to tactic number 10, Floods and Finishers. And first up, we've got Golem Foundry. Yeah, let's take even more advantage of casting all those artifact spells. Whenever you cast one, you get a charge counter on this. And then by removing 3 counters from it, you get a 3/3 onto the battlefield. Keep in mind that is a 3/3 artifact creature. So yeah, basically this is a mana rock generating machine that is also an army. And also an army that is pretty deadly. Again, if you cast an absurd amount of artifacts, cool, you can just make like 10 of these essentially. And yeah, you get 10 more mana, or yeah, you can just swing at your opponents with 30 damage or even more. Moving on, Psy Master Thopterus. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get a 1/1 Thopter. So yeah, that can be absolutely absurd, making a massive flying army in no time. And again, those are artifact creatures. So essentially, every single one of your mana rocks comes with another mana rock. By paying 1 a blue, sacrifice 2 artifacts, draw a card. Absolutely crazy indeed. Then there's Efficient Construction. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get a 1/1 Thopter with flying. So again, basically like Psy, but not quite as good, but slightly more protected because it's an enchantment versus a creature. Still, getting more artifacts in play is never a bad thing, especially ones that could just take out your opponents as well. Mishra Self-Replicator. This one can get crazy. A 2/2 Assembly Worker. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you may pay 1. If you do, create a token's copy of Mishra's Self-Replicator. So basically, you can make more and more and more of these each time. Essentially, again, hey, you make a copy of it. That means each of them now has the ability to be copied again and again and again with just casting a single artifact spell each time. Yeah, this can get out of control and crazy. And again, yes, they are artifacts, so you can utilize them for mana again, thanks to Urza. Then there's Psychosis Crawler. Hey, already talked about we've got an absurd amount of ways to draw cards, and yeah, a lot of ways to draw an absurd amount of cards at once. Psychosis Crawler can say, hey, I'm a giant mana dork. A star with power and toughness, each equal to the number of cards in your hand. Giant creature. More importantly, though, whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. So drain your opponents out with a card like this. Finally, make your opponents cry and probably quit the game with Temporal Fissure. Return target permanent to its owner's hand. Storm. Yeah, again, we can just cast an absurd amount of cards in a single turn. Even just say like, hey, we've got like, I don't know, 10 free artifacts in our hand. Okay, let's say we've built ourselves up to have 10 free artifacts not in our hand. Sorry, in play. Then you bounce them back to your hand with a card like Displacement Wave. Cool, they're back in our hand. We play them for free. That's 10 more spells that we just cast. Cast this, bounce 10 things. That is a very minimal example on what we can do. Again, with the amount of mana that we can generate, the amount of crazy things that we can do. Cast this spell, bounce an absurd amount of things, including your opponent's lands. Yeah, when you're finishing the game off with something like this, yeah, kind of anything goes, I would say. If you have like Storm Count 40, you probably just win because your opponent's cards are all gone and you can go get, your massive army generated by the time they're able to get anything back. Also, if you're not trying to win with this earlier in the game, this can just be a great way to bounce your cards back to your hand. Again, another one of those fantastic bounce spells that says, hey, you know what? Let's bounce some artifacts back to my hand, replay them essentially, and get even more value out of them. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts are on this deck. Yeah, again, with this kind of a commander, you can build an overpowered deck even on a budget. Again, the commander is almost half the budget essentially, and you can still have a very, very crazy, effective, powerful deck. If you are excited about this deck, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. Comment below with your thoughts. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.